At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
I have come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubble.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, let's turn down the gain on the microphone just a bit, shall we? Welcome to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. You got a belly up to the bar, we've kept you a seat, and it's great to see you back. Kelly is going to be our bartendress tonight. She pours with the best of them, and the lava lamp is in fact lighted to my left, your right. If you happen to be watching, yes, I said watching, on YouTube. You can watch me on YouTube. Go to the SHR Media channel on YouTube. Quick like a bunny. Once you're there, you'll see that the Berserk Bobcat Saloon is currently playing on the SHR Media channel. Be sure when you're there, be sure to subscribe to that channel as well. Or you could go to shrmedia.com right now. Again, quick like a bunny. Click on Listen Live. Go into the chat room, for God's sake. Yes, we have a chat room here at SHR Media because we spare no damn expense. You know it. So tonight is Thursday. It is September 14th, year of our Lord 2017. It's Thursday, which is the show I call The Aftermath, which I say is essentially all the shite that I couldn't fit into the Tuesday night show. The Sackheads were sufficiently oppressive to make sure that I could not or would not mention last night on the Wednesday Sackheads show, because that's how they are. That's how they roll. I have to tell you one thing, though. We don't water our drinks here, just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all here at the saloon. Nothing is sacred. The speech is free, but the booze is not. Sorry to say, Jersey Joe was not on tonight. And so I'm trying an experiment. I've got YouTube ramped up, so I'm going to see if YouTube screws me over right in the old bunghole, just like it did last night and every other night that I've been accessing YouTube for probably the past 2 weeks now. I forgot one thing. All we ask here in the saloon is that you flush the toilet, jiggle the handle. Don't forget to tip your waiter, waitress, or server. You pick the appropriate noun or pronoun, as you choose. Well, tonight, it's Thursday, so have we got a lot of good stuff for you. We missed him last week, but I have it on good faith that the underground professor, Dr. Michael Jones, is going to be on here tonight, and we're going to talk about some constitutional issues and some things that have raised the nasty little head here recently. We see, by the way, I see Mike is already in chat, and one viewer who will, of course, remain unmasked because that's what we do here. We don't unmask people here at the saloon. While we're waiting for the underground professor, 9/11 just occurred 3 days ago. Today's the 14th. I found a very sad article in the UK Telegraph, And the headline is like this. And again, I say, if you want to find out a lot of what's happening in the United States and you can't find it here, jump across the pond, go look at UK media, internet media, and you will frequently find things on the internet there, in their newspapers, etc., that you won't find here. So it's extremely important. Don't just consider one source, the American media maggots, as I call them. Go across the pond. Look at UK media. Look at German media. Look at Australian media. You'll find a lot of things covered in English-speaking countries outside the United States. Occasionally even in Canada, although not so much. Things that aren't covered here because the American media maggots are, in fact, just that. And this is one thing that I found in the UK, courtesy of the UK Telegraph. The headline on the week of 9/11 is this: Teachers scared to teach lessons on 9/11 terror attack. It's been 16 years since 9/11 in 2001. We're already going here as a nation. And it goes like this. Some teachers are too scared to discuss 9/11 with their pupils as they fear a backlash from Muslim parents. A leading expert in counter-extremism education has warned. Kamal Hanif, OBE, that's, by the way, OBE stands for Order of the British Empire, in case you Yanks didn't know that, who was appointed by the government to turn around 3 schools at the heart of the Trojan horse scandal, said that some teachers have a misplaced concern that they will cause offense if they raise 9/11 in the classroom. Now, I should like to point out that this is a UK story about the UK, but again, uncovered here in the United States. Now, you have to ask yourself one very important question. If this is occurring in the UK, if these concerns are there from teachers in the UK, do you not suspect that American teachers all across the fruited plain, some of them have the same concerns? You bet, which is why I decided to bring this article into the fray tonight. He said that some teachers, particularly those who work in schools with a high proportion of Muslim students, see it as a contentious topic and they shy away from teaching it. So we fear the very individual.
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
Individuals who took down and killed 3,000 people on 9/11 in New York City, brought down 2 massive World Trade Towers and Building 7, as well as other buildings. They're afraid to mention it now. And it's of concern in the UK. Teachers sometimes have a fear that this might be controversial, he said. They think if we teach about this, we might get Muslim parents objecting. My first response to that is very base, because I went into the true meaning of 9/11 last Tuesday, what it really means and what we really need to remember about it. And speaking of which, I believe we have someone here. I believe we have the underground professor who just called in. And if so, is this Dr. Michael Jones?
Oh, boy. I tell you what, I lost my phone. Every time I pushed the phone app, it just got a white screen and then the phone locked up and I had to reboot it several times. So I'm glad I finally got in.
Well, that's great because I can hear you great. I can hear you fine. And I bet everybody else can too. Hey, the first thing
My
that
girlfriend thinks I hung up on her, though, so I just got this nasty text from her. I'm like, uh-oh. And now I got to do the radio show, so I can't, call her back and say, hey.
Oh, that's right. And texting her on the phone is going to be difficult, too.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. When it rains, it pours, sir.
It does indeed. I think, if I'm not sure that I asked you this before, but if I didn't, the hurricane down in not Irma but Harvey. Did you receive anything because of Hurricane Harvey? Did you get any damage or anything of that nature because you're in Texas, or are you too far inland?
No, I'm 400 miles from the coast of Corpus, but we got a lot of rain, and I had a lot of pecan tree branches that came down from the winds, but not anything to whine about for sure, especially when you look at what's happening down in Houston and Corpus and that area. Those guys really got it.
And isn't it funny that already the American media maggots have decided that, and I know why, I know exactly why, and I'd like your opinion about this when I get through telling you, you don't hear about Houston anymore, do you? And you don't hear about Hurricane Irma anymore, do you? And I know exactly why. It's because Trump, they're going to lay it at the feet of Trump. Trump isn't, by way of the federal response, screwing this up by the numbers. So if and until he does screw it up, the American media maggots are going to make sure that they absolutely ignore everything in Houston, everything that whacked out Florida. It's as if that didn't even exist anymore. It all just magically went away. Am I way out of whack on this one?
You're actually right. FEMA did its job. They pre-planned. They got out there ahead of things, and they made sure that they did things right. And so the media has no interest in reporting that. You notice that Russia also is no longer on the on the radar. So, when it started showing that the people that were colluding were Democrats, then all of a sudden that kind of disappeared too. And it's the same thing. They have a template, and the template is destroy Republican presidents. And look at it. If you don't believe me, and I know you do.
Oh, I do. Oh, hell yeah.
Listeners don't. Yeah. All they have to do is look and see how excited the media got when they thought Trump was making deals with Chucky Schumer, and then how they acted when he came out and said that he had not made those deals. So for a minute he was the greatest president ever, and then he's again the incarnate soul of the Antichrist. So
it's like the UK expression: keep calm and carry on. Just take a chill pill, wait and see how this stuff goes. All is not lost. All is not lost.
And that's advice I give you whenever you hear these things like he's made a deal with Schumer. Just, okay, sit down and wait for it to play out and find out the details, because we're going to find out that what the media is telling us is probably not, right. It's not copacetic. It's not 100%. And there'll be more to it. Because I had a lot of people calling me and saying, what do you think about this? This is it. I'm not going to support him anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, just wait.
Yeah, exactly, because
there'll be the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say.
Well, yeah, exactly. Here's what I think happened, because the Democrats, and this is how political everything has gotten. If there's a meeting, if, for example, this dinner meeting between Schumer and Pelosi with Donald Trump last night, who controls the media is the first person that gets to the microphone the next day and starts talking about it. Then they get control. And that's what happened. Chuck Schumer got ahead of it.
What they did was they went out there, BZ, to create a narrative,
yes,
and put Trump against the corner. So they were going to say they had this deal so that Trump would feel like, because this worked with Bush, both of the Bushes, in fact, that they would make this declaration, and then Bush would feel the need to comply with it because he didn't want to be embarrassed by coming out, and creating hell by saying, well, no, wait, we didn't have that deal. But Trump is just too blunt. He's like, he'll come out and tell you, no, this is not what we talked about. And I'm surprised how diplomatic Trump has been over this. But I think he's a master negotiator, and there's a lot going on here, wheels within wheels.
I think so too. But it's interesting because the Democrats, specifically little Chucky Schumer, thought that he was going to step out and get in front of it and mention it first, because in his mind, whoever gets out and talks about it first controls the narrative. And that was his attempt to do precisely that. And then, as you say, what happened? Well, the American media maggots came in, grabbed that narrative, and ran with it because they wanted to make sure, as you pointed out, that lots of Trump backers now said, oh my God, he's betrayed us. Well, you know what? All politicians betray you sooner or later. But hey, hang on. As I said, all is not lost. There are some great things that are going on with Trump. He's done some wonderful things already. Don't get all excited over.
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
This, for God's sakes, folks, we got another 3 years to go. This is not worth, taking pot shots at Donald Trump. There's going to be worse things than this. And so just hold on. Hold your horses.
That's like Reagan said, if you're 80% my friend, then you're my friend. So, there's no one. I don't even agree with myself 100% of the time. So I don't expect Trump to be there either.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And,
as I've said before, the only person who would be the perfect politician would be me. Because if there's someone that I completely agree with, it's myself. Everyone else, not so much. Not quite so much. Altruism?
I'll take it a step further.
Okay.
If somebody that I agreed with 100% of the time, BC, I would become highly suspicious of them because there's something wrong.
Right. Or they have a wire implanted in your brain, or there's a chip going on in there, because it's like, stay the hell out of my brain. There's just room enough in here, just for one, just for me. All others, go the hell away.
That's right. And I don't have room for one more voice in my head. There's already enough.
I know. Is that ever true? I'm a victim of let's see. It's NSCB. It's non-specific cranial buzzing all the time. And so it's like there's enough going on in this wheelhouse for a cast of thousands, and I don't need 1,001. I really honestly don't.
Like the Dalmatians, they say. Let's keep your spots to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask you about sanctuary cities, and I know this isn't really on the cusp of what's going on right now. So I'm going to back up a little bit. A little bit later on tonight, after I get through talking to you, I'm going to talk about a story in which recently, let's see, I think it was Dianne Feinstein, interrogated, not just interviewed, but interrogated a prospective judge, and then gave her what for, because this was a Catholic judge, and as far as Dianne Feinstein was concerned, because she was Catholic, she questioned whether she could do the job. So have we gotten to the point now where if you're religious in any fashion, that as far as Dianne Feinstein is concerned, I guess that completely excludes you from any form of public service?
Yes. Yeah. You have Adams and every single founding father and framer. I can find you a quote, every one of them, that talks about how only a moral and religious people can rule themselves. And yet today, a moral and religious person is looked upon as with distrust in the Democrat Party. But keep this in mind: the fact that they were Catholic, that's not new in this country until Kennedy, when he ran for president, there were a lot of people who were like, I can't vote for him. He's Catholic.
Now, that's true.
Kind of like, Mitch when he's Mormon. And they're like, well, I can't vote for him. He's Mormon. And so, we discriminate rampantly in this country about religion. Look at the whole Muslim issue and how we're dealing with that. We're discriminating in the other way, like affirmative action discrimination. We're giving them every benefit of the doubt instead of treating them like they really are. But we have religious tests. The Democrat Party at their last convention, or 2 conventions ago, I guess it was, they voted God out until they realized the backlash to that out of their platform. And they, overrode their own people at the convention and snuck them back in. So the Democrats have a big problem with religion. And that's primarily because of who they associate with. The people on the left are godless. Be a socialist or a communist. For some reason, they always feel the need to get rid of God. And we could get into that, but, because they kind of have to make the state superior. And you can't have a bunch of people running around saying that God gives me rights when the state needs to control everything.
Well, exactly.
And, So this is what's happening is the Democrats are just simply acknowledging that now a little more openly, is that has all the answers, and by state I mean the central government, not like California. Which, speaking of, by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but I am a big fan of California and the secessionist movement. Being a Texan, we were always screaming we'll secede, but I think I would love to see California go, because that would, what do you guys have, like 54 electoral delegates?
I'm of two minds about that.
Yeah. And I think that's fantastic. I've always prayed that the San Andreas Fault will fix this, but, hey, secession will be just as easy.
Well, as far as the faults are concerned, don't stop there. One of the biggest faults that's much, even people don't know about this. There's a much larger fault up north in the northern United States that runs through Oregon and a big chunk of Washington. And so if we can get a little coordination between these two faults when they cork off, and the one I'm talking about that's up north is the Cascadia fault line. And it's way overdue. San Andreas is a piker compared to the Cascadia. So if the Cascadia corks off one day and then decides that it's going to shake hands with the San Andreas on the same day, so to speak, and the rest of it goes into the sea, that's fine for me. But you were bringing up secession. Like I said, I'm of two minds about that because I'm still here, and my wife is still working. Now, if I can get her to retire soon, which probably won't happen, if I can do that, and then I move to another state, or in the Midwest, or I go on the East Coast or something like that, all right, I say, California, you bet. California thinks it's all that and cream cheese, and it's absolutely not. And if it were to secede, and we talked about this, I think about 3 weeks ago or so, because there are many what's the word I'm looking for? Assurances. It's built into the Constitution so that this just can't happen willy-nilly. Well, since I'm talking to a constitutional scholar, let me ask you, because you posed the question, what would be the chance of California doing that? And if so, if they really got oh, by the way, it's going to be on the ballot next year in November. No, yes. I think it's going to be on the ballot. Is it going to be on the ballot this year?
This next election.
It might be on the ballot next month. And if it gets a sufficient amount of votes, they're going to try to go further with that. So the question then I think goes to you, because you raised the question, and it's a really good question, is could they do it? And if so, if there's even the slightest possibility, what kind of stuff would they have to go through in order to make that a reality?
Well, I would have to look at how California came into the union. Texas, we came in by contract, and because the central government didn't want to just pay all of our bills like they did every other territory,
Right.
we gave up a lot of land, because Texas went all the way up to like Utah. I mean, it was huge, and we chopped off a big lump of it, gave it to the central government as a payment for paying some of our debts. And because of that, we came in the union debt-free. And by contract, we're allowed, with James K. Polk, we're allowed to do two things. We can secede.
Right.
And that was preserved through the Civil War, by the way. There's scholars that will tell you that that's not true, but I think it is true, that it was preserved. Or we can divide Texas into 5 smaller states, up to 5 smaller states, which I've encouraged us to do, because then, we could carve out like, Dallas and Houston, and, give them, 2 Democrat states, and then we could pop in 3 Republican states and just whop them. But, or even better, so that's what we have in the contract. I would have to look at California, but I'm pretty sure they came under the regular rubric, and that idea was settled at the Civil War with Lincoln, that states do not have a right to secede from the Union. Now, I disagree with that decision, but it was decided by a lot of blood and accepted because of the results. Because if you go back, and I find it very interesting, and I love to point these things out to Yankees, that New York threatened to secede if the Second Amendment was not included into the Constitution. Now think about this. This is the state with the most draconian gun laws. They make California look, like pussies when it comes to creating gun laws. And by that I mean restrictions on the right to exercise your Second Amendment rights. They were, in fact, a state that almost did not ratify the Constitution because of a lack of a Second Amendment and protection of people's rights to defend themselves. So, that's the way time goes. But anyway, if they were to secede, and I think they have a right to secede as a state. If you come in, you have a right to leave. Okay? But there would be a lot of complications for things like they would have to surrender the military equipment and bases. And remember, this was decided when the rebels fired on Fort Sumter and decided they were going to keep all the military bases and equipment when they seceded. And there's a lot of contract law and stuff, but they would have to negotiate trade agreements with the United States. When basically, if the United States didn't like this, they could just cut off trade to California, and I think California would pretty much wither and die, especially for the fact that, how many people in California are takers instead of givers.
Well, yes. How many hosts are there, and how many parasites are there? Well, I would wager that at this point, you're almost at the tipping point where the parasites are just about to outweigh the hosts. The other question that I had about that is, let's say California, for whatever reason, they wanted to do that. How would they deal with federal land in California? That would have to be a huge, huge issue. Would the federal government even want to give up all of that land that's in California?
Well, I doubt they would, although I think it's, to me, the central government, let's call it what it is, because the federal government involves the state governments and the central government combined. But the Fabian socialists came over and changed our language and got us to call the central government the federal government completely, and that's how we think of it now. The central government should not be in the business of owning property in all these states. When this was originally set up as a country, the central government only owned enough land to build a school and a federal office. And, so they basically took like a couple of acres out of the city, and then the rest of it, belonged to each city. Go back and look at the Northwest Ordinance. That's one of the most beautiful documents in the world. It gave away like 60% of our country, and it's only a few pages long. And that's the template that we should be following today. However, the argument is that the central government does own property in California. If California secedes, then the only option would be either that we get an easement to our property, or California has to reimburse us for that property, which we know they don't have because they're pretty much a bankrupt state.
Well, I wonder why that was.
And again, if they don't, then we would have a Fort Sumter deal, where we would have to go to war to enforce our rights as the United States against California.
Dave makes an excellent point in chat, and that's, California, they'd survive perhaps maybe 10 years. Well, they'd be a third world country immediately. And then, I'll tell you what, we got to take a break. It's the bottom of the hour. We're talking to the underground professor, who is Dr. Michael Jones. Hang on for about 2 or 3 minutes. We'll be right back, and I'd like to ask Dr. Jones maybe 2 more questions, because I know he's going to have to go after a while, but they both revolve basically around sanctuary cities. This is going to be a huge issue, particularly in light of what happened in Maryland this week. Folks, you're listening to the Bloviating Sepulon on the Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show on the SHR Media Network and High Plains Pundit Radio. Be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to...
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
Support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism, so common today, is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Catholic is stupid.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Doing the job the American media maggots won't. Fundamentally changing America. One diaper at a time. Here is, courtesy of the SHR Media Network, the Bloviating Zeppelin.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are in fact listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin on the SHR Media Network, and we're here in the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. It is Thursday, September 14th already, the year of our Lord 2017. We are talking to the underground professor himself, Dr. Michael Jones, and we were talking about California seceding, or perhaps even falling off into the ocean. On that point, though, I'd like to ask you a question that really doesn't have much to do with constitutionality, but I was thinking about this the other day, since you brought it up. Could California make it on its own? Well, let's think about that for a moment. Does it have a really good infrastructure in terms of, say, the ability to support itself, like electricity, electrical generation stations, a way to distribute power really well? How good are its industries, or are a lot of the industries leaving California? And the answer is yes. They're leaving California, and they have been doing so for quite a number of years. 10, 20 years. Yes, yes. And I loved it when Rick Perry came to California and said, hey, leave that damn state. Come on over to Texas. Now, this is the question I want to ask you. Isn't it true that generally Texas is very independent in terms of its own electricity? In other words, it doesn't really have to link up to the rest of the grid in the United States. It can go independent that way if it wants to.
No, we can't hook up to the grid of the United States. There are three grids in the U.S. There's a left coast grid, a right coast grid, and Texas. We are on our own grid. And if we seceded, we could continue our own power and whatnot. But if California seceded, then they would have to negotiate electrical prices with the United States to continue receiving power on the grid that they get. And they are if I'm not mistaken, California still is a net exporter of energy. So they create more energy than they consume. But that's not true of water. And California would be in deep chemistry when it comes to water. They're already not letting farmers farm so that smelt can have, or snail daughters or whatever can have what they want. Because remember, Fred Thompson was getting upset about that when he was still alive. The energy would be a big deal. You would have to negotiate with the U.S. on that because you're on our grid. And you would either have to get off the grid and create your own or negotiate energy prices with us.
You could be energy independent tomorrow.
California, by the way, I'm going to tell you what, California could easily survive as its own country. It has one of the largest economies. Every time I see statistics, they're like, if they were their own country, they'd be like the sixth, richest country in the world or something like that, So it's like, yes, they could. The problem is that they're being run by progtards. And so, no, they would not survive. I've often said that we don't need a southern border in Texas to wall off the Mexicans and OTMs. What we need is a northern border to keep Yankees out. And by Yankees, I mean anybody that's not a Texan. And if we were to put up a northern border, then we could wait 10 years and then buy the rest of the country back 10 cents on the dollar and own the whole country.
Well, even absent infrastructure, absent electricity, etc., farming, you name it.
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
Once California opened its doors, because it would do exactly that, it would invite everyone in, as many people as humanly possible. They would rush in from the southern border, flee up San Diego, and go up north and decide to take as much free shite as they possibly could. Because at this point, California wants to go single payer. That would cost them $10 billion. That's a little bit more than what their current budget is. So even without all of those
GDP, I think.
Yeah. Even without all of those issues, California would tank just because it could not keep up with the people that it wants to lovingly embrace. The other thing about Texas is folks don't realize, and that's why it's so important that when Texas gets whacked with a hurricane, the rest of the nation feels it, is that Texas has the chemical coast. And people don't realize that. But it's called the chemical coast because all the refineries. Well,
progressives have not let a refinery be built since the 70s. Do you realize that there has not been a refinery built in the last 40 years?
Well, in
this country, maybe even longer, and so that's why we're having these problems. We tried to do this where we were going to build refineries up in North Texas and have that pipeline come down from Canada,
right?
And then the coast wouldn't affect gas prices as much as it does whenever there's a hurricane. But the Obama nixed that, killed it. So.
Well, the funny thing is,
we process everything. We not only drill it and take it out of the land, but we also convert it. And so a lot of the country sends their oil and their raw crude down to Texas so that it can be refined. Now, California does a lot of that too. And that's because California requires all these different blended fuels. And in California, there's over 100 different requirements based on local governments on what kind of blended fuels you can have. And so that's why gas prices are so expensive there. Well, the artificial increase for that.
Yeah, that and the fact that they passed a bill in the dead of night increasing registration about 50 to 70%, and also the price of a gallon of gasoline is going to go up in November by about 40 cents a gallon, just because they want to shove that cash over into set-asides. So that they can
that's going to happen in California.
Yeah, well, the stories I can tell you about that, because my wife happens to work for DMS, which is the Department of Measurement Standards, and they deal with petroleum. You wouldn't believe the underhanded deals that are already occurring in California and where all the money is going and disappearing, incredibly disappearing. But here's the other thing:
I had a friend that owned an Exxon. Franchisee,
right?
And I was over there, and I've known him for 20-something years at this time. And this has been, 10 years ago. So keep in mind the numbers that I'm about to give you are 10 years out of date, and they didn't get better; they got worse.
Yeah.
Okay. I was ragging on him during the gas crisis we had back then, and with Bush and all the gases were going up and everything, and I was. This is just before Obama. Remember the gas prices started cranking up?
Yep.
And so I was ragging on him about the usurious gas stations fleecing Americans, because that's what we were hearing on the news. And my friend, his name is Howard, got mad at me. And because we talk politics all the time, and he's a great man. He's a smart man, and mostly because he asks me questions. But so he went into his office and grabbed a board and thrust it into my hands, easy. And I'm looking at these spreadsheets, and of course I had no idea what I was looking at. So he started pointing things out to me. And the short version of the story is I walked away stunned. And I don't get stunned and speechless very often. I walked away stunned and speechless because he showed me how out of every tanker that comes to him, and of course back then he had to keep so much cash on him because he had to pay $15,000 for a tanker to come in and load up his gas tank. And again, this is 10, 12 years ago. And then he showed me out of that money, he says about 5,000 of it paid for the gas. Okay, the other 5,000 were taxes and fees that the government requires, and that's from the central government to the county to the state to the local, you name it. All these different government entities have their hands in it. And when I boiled down the numbers, it come out to 53% of every gallon of gas was taxes. Now I look up at that sign, and it says gas was $3.99 and 9/10 a gallon.
All right.
And we all think that's the tax. That 9/10 is what they're taxing the gas.
God, no.
53% of the gasoline are taxes and fees. Now, you don't pay all that up front. You don't see it in your gas cost, but the gas station owner pays it and passes it on to you. And he was telling me that if it was a miracle day, he would make 8 cents a gallon. And that's what Exxon, by the way, made on a gallon of gas, 8 cents. He said he averaged 3 cents a gallon when he gets a truck. And when the gas prices go up, he may make a couple more pennies. If they go down, then he loses money. And he says on average, when throughout an entire year, he makes 2 to 3 cents. Exxon makes about 8 cents a gallon. And the government makes half of the cost of a gallon.
Well, yeah, we know that supermarkets...
And that's just useless. And think about it. If you want to cut the price of gas, all you have to do is tell the government to get the hell out of the gasoline. And then that's 53% in my UBZ before you even get to the extra costs of government requiring these blended fuels and ethanol fuels and corn subsidies and all that other junk that it's costing Americans.
Well,
that just makes the money go exponentially higher.
Which is a massive scam. I mean, don't get me started on ethanol. That's a massive scam in and of itself. But I wanted to point out one thing about
the Republicans for that.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I wanted to point out one thing about Texas additionally, which is that the number one export now in the United States is refined petroleum. And where does that come from? That's right, it comes from Texas, from the refineries on the chemical coast. So essentially, Texas has the testicles of the rest of the United States in its hands to crush at any time.
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
That it wants, because that's the number one export of the entire nation right now, refined petroleum.
Yeah.
And I'll wager people didn't know that.
All the Yankees up there on the East Coast with their heating oil and everything that they get real cheap and subsidized, it comes straight from us, a pipeline all the way up there too. So don't forget that either. When it comes to energy, Texas owns this country.
Oh.
Because we own energy.
Yeah. God, yes. Just like in Canada, Alberta owns Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, we have the Keystone XL pipeline going to go in, which was a stupid deal not to make. But that's a story for another day. In any event, folks, if you're looking to get the hell out of California, BZ, now would be an excellent time to do it, and Texas would be a great state to go. I would go to Texas. I got to tell you, Dr. Jones, I would go to Texas in a heartbeat if I could find a nice place that's not 110 degrees in the summer, just like it is here in Sacramento in the belly of the beast. If I could find a place like that in Texas.
We have a place in Texas like that. We call it Colorado.
Now, that's some funny shite. I like that. I have to like that. I want to ask you one final question, and it's about sanctuary cities. They were an issue, and they got set on the back burner. Hell, I could even go into DACA for that matter. But sanctuary cities are an issue. Is a sanctuary city constitutional?
No, because you're given illegal aliens, non-citizens, extra constitutional rights in sanctuary cities, and you're basically having a government whose job is to follow the law and legislate the law and decide the law. So government. Remember, every government, no matter what branch it is, what level it is, whether county, state, local, there is, a judicial, a legislative, and an executive branch.
Right.
And part of the duties are to interpret the laws, enforce the laws, meaning follow them also, and to create them. And so what we have, think about this non sequitur. We have a government body who's creating their own laws and telling us we have to comply to them, that we have to follow. Like in the state of California, you have to follow their speed limits, you have to follow their gas rules, you have to follow their car registration, the regulations on businesses, all that we have to follow in California because the California government says so. And then the California government says, however, we don't like some of the laws the central government has passed, and so we're not going to comply or follow them. Well, based on that same argument, California citizens can disregard any law they don't like. Because, what authority does a government have to not follow law? They have no authority, because the authority for government comes from we the people, the sovereigns of this country. It's on temporary loan, and politicians are temporary servants. They're not permanent overseers or lords, or they're nothing more than leaders. They're not masters. And so government must comply with the law, and a sanctuary city is basically a snub in the face and saying that we're going to pick and choose what laws we like, but we're going to make you live under the laws that we like too. And that's wrong.
I have two questions then. We got 10 minutes left till the top of the hour, so I have two questions left. One of them just came from chat, and it's an excellent question. But since I asked about sanctuary cities, that brought up the next question that I was going to ask you, which is this. Now, various cities and states throughout the nation are saying, you know what, it's illegal, D.C., and we're going to sue you because you're saying you're going to withhold funds to cities and areas that claim sanctuary city status. You can't withhold those funds. That's illegal. Is that constitutional?
Well, the government has no business with those funds in the first place. But having said that, the courts have already ruled that the government can withhold funds. Texas, the state government under Abbott, who has threatened to do this to cities in Texas, and of course the central government, can withhold funds if they're directly related to the reason they're withholding. So, in other words, if it has something to do with English as a second language or money to help people, become citizens or something, I don't know. I guess they can withhold that stuff, but they can't withhold highway funds because of a state or a city declaring itself a sanctuary city. That's already been decided by district courts, not the Supreme Court, but by district courts. And that probably would be upheld by the Supreme Court. I would not be surprised to see they uphold that. Now, I find this ironic that the very people who are claiming that this is unconstitutional to withhold funds are the ones who withhold funds for everything else. When they didn't like Texas increasing the speed limits in Texas, well, then Jimmy Carter withheld our highway funds until we put them down to 55. And
that's right.
He also, so the left is very happy of withdrawing funds. And look at what has gone on up in the New England states when military recruiters were kicked off the campuses and they threatened to, when the military started to make a stink about it, they threatened to withhold funds if the colleges weren't allowed, to do it. And I'm thinking that should have been the opposite. We should have told these colleges, if you're kicking off the military recruiters off your campus, then you don't get federal funds anymore.
Bingo.
So do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this has been an ongoing thing. It's been a long game, and it's a do what we say, not what we do kind of issue for the left. And it's a new game for the right, because we haven't ever done this, as far as I know. We're not big on this withholding fund stuff or playing these kind of games. We usually decide, when the left's running things, they get to decide what they're going to do. And when we run things, we get to let the left decide what we're going to do.
Yeah.
That's usually what the right does.
Funny how that works. Ripped from today's screaming book, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. There's a guy that I spoke to who's a member of the Alinsky Institute, and I'm going to bring him on. And I told him, essentially, that what conservatives need to do is make that book their own and use those principles to get done what actually needs to be done. Now, I had a question here in chat, and it came from Mike in chat, and he wanted to know, is the FBI constitutional? Is it legal?
I don't think it is, actually. I think the NSA and the CIA are, but I don't think the FBI is. And because we don't have any authority to create a national police force. And by the way, I'm not so sure that any police level of police is constitutional. If you go back all the way back to how the founders and framers created stuff, they were very afraid of police states and who had authority. And people were responsible for crime. If someone robbed you, the founding fathers would say it was up to you to figure out who did it and to get your friends together and go take care of it. And that's how they would have, thought this should be resolved, that we shouldn't have a police force. The problem is we created a civil society, a social contract, and we got too many people moving into cities and off of farms, and we had to do something. And so Pinkerton and other groups were born, and then police states, and I think the first one was created up in New York, and no one wanted to do it because they thought it was so distasteful, so the Irish jumped in and did it, and that's why now, 9 out of 10 cops up there are Irish, because it was the only job Irish could get. But yeah, I don't think that it is constitutional. And that this has been considered because of all the rules about the FBI is domestic and the CIA is international. And,
correct.
And they can't walk on each other's territory, etc. And then you look at posse comitatus. So I'm not sure that it falls under that. But just think about these considerations that government has looked at in this guise, and I would say that there would probably need to be an amendment to the Constitution to justify it. But it was created statutorily, legislatively, and so it's legal. There's a lot of things that are legal, but I'm not sure the Constitution.
Here's an interesting aspect that I'll wager perhaps yourself and a lot of other people don't know, since I used to work for them a long time ago. Let's say Sacramento County, for example. We know that there's an FBI office on Orange Grove Avenue in Sacramento. Were you aware, folks, that FBI agents, if they want to carry off duty, have to apply for a CCW for the county?
In California, they do, really?
Yes.
Well, any FBI agent out there listening in California, I put in a request to move to Texas. If you don't carry in Texas, then you're in trouble.
Oh, boy. That's an excellent point.
Remember that there was a Sandra Bullock movie called Miss Congeniality. It's one of my favorite movies.
Okay.
She's an FBI agent who goes undercover as a Miss America pageant down here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts screaming gun because she sees a person in the audience with a gun, and she dives and tackles them and everything, and then later she's being debriefed, and someone makes the comment that this is Texas. Of course he has a gun. Everybody has a gun. Even my hairdresser has a gun. And so,
all true.
Yeah. Yep, pretty much.
We've only got about 1 minute left, but I want to sort of prep you for this next question. If you're going to be around next Thursday, I'd like to talk about DACA and the constitutionality or the unconstitutionality about that, and how is it that we think that we can just arbitrarily do that, and that also rolls into executive orders. We spoke about executive orders on a previous time with the Underground Professor. Mm-hmm. But next time you come back, I'd like to chat about DACA because that's going to be a massive issue. Plus this that I'd like to throw in your ear just before we leave. And in Maryland, in a small town called College Park, Maryland, this week, they decided that they were going to provide all illegals the ability to vote in city elections, say for mayor, dog catcher, garbage collector, etc. I'm seeing and I'm thinking that's a trend that's building. And so I'd like to ask you about DACA, about that, and about these various trends that we do, in fact, see building, because that's where leftists want to go. I don't see it going any other way, quite frankly.
Now, they're being upfront with why they want illegal aliens in the first place. It's for the vote.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know if I can wait a whole week to do that, but I will.
Okay, that'd be great. Folks, we've been talking to the Underground Professor. It's Dr. Michael Jones. He was here for an entire hour. I thank you ever so kindly for that. Folks, we're going to have to go to a break. And thank you, Dr. Jones. I'd love to have you back next Thursday.
I'll be here. Good night, everybody.
All righty, thank you very much. Folks, hang on. We're going to be right back. And then trust me when I tell you, there is going to be a startling revelation, and there's going to be more political buttery goodness. Come right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
In a world.
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
Controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Catholic, stupid.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
The bloviating Zeppelin He's big-footed enough radio shows to last a lifetime, courtesy of Sean, Clint, Ken, and Jersey Joe. Now it's time for him to waddle on his own 2 feet via the glorious SHR Media. Gird thy loins for the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Coming soon to ossicles near you. Excelsior.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
And we're back. It's the final hour. You are, in fact, listening to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, live and direct here on the SHR Media Network. We had just been speaking for the past hour to the underground professor, Dr. Michael Jones, and I'd like to step off the top of the hour with something maybe a bit positive, because
It's time for happy stories and good times.
here's an article from the LA Times, and the headline is this: "That sucker's coming down. 83-year-old man pushes suspected burglar off of his roof in La Puente." Now that's a happy story. An 83-year-old man pushed a suspected burglar off his roof in La Puente on Tuesday, capping an hours-long standoff with deputies, authorities said. Crisis negotiators had been called to the neighborhood where a man was jumping from rooftop to rooftop, Los Angeles County Sheriff's officials said. The suspect was on one roof for about 5 hours before the elderly resident, this is a quote from the story, got tired of his antics, climbed onto the roof, and pushed the man off, according to Sergeant Joseph Morales. And he said, "The grandpa did what we couldn't," Captain Tim Murakami tweeted after the incident. "I'd made up my mind. I said, he's on my roof. Whatever it takes, he's coming off." That's why that's a happy story. And a good time. Wilford Burgess told ABC7 after he pushed the man off his house's roof. Burgess said he told his neighbor he needed to borrow his ladder to get the man down. "I'm going on that roof. That sucker's coming down," Burgess said. In a video of the incident, by the way, if you want to see the video, it's a crack up. It's at latimes.com. And then, in there, put something about 83-year-old man. In a video of the incident, Burgess is seen pushing and shoving the man and giving him a few choice words before the man is launched off the front of the roof and slams onto the hood of Burgess's car. The windshield was wrecked with a circular web of cracks and breaks from the man's impact. I like that. And that's why that is definitely...
It's time for happy stories and good times.
That's why that was a happy story. Now to go to something that's not quite so happy, because the envelope keeps getting pushed. If you weren't aware today, North Korea decided it was going to be into its best interest to launch another missile over Japan. That's number 2 now in the Pacific, as it continues to taunt the world. And this time, Seoul, which is the capital of South Korea, decided that it was going to retaliate with its very own test. North Korea launched another missile, this time flying straight over Japan. It was fired from Sunan District, from the Stalinist dictatorship's capital, Pyongyang. The South Korean and U.S. militaries are now analyzing the details of the launch. It comes as North Korea threatened to nuke Japan after the latest round of sanctions, and in response to the launch, Japanese say they will not tolerate more provocation. South Korea, meanwhile, launched one of its missiles into the sea in response. Now, after I found that, I also happened to find this particular article. And I'm kind of curious what you guys think, and perhaps you can let me know in chat. Here's an article from CNBC.com, and I can't say that I particularly disagree with this if push comes to shove. The headline is, "A Korean military conflict could mean World War III, says Citi's top political analyst. Conflict on the Korean Peninsula could potentially lead to a third world war," said Citi's chief global political analyst. Both oil prices and growth would be hit if the worst case scenario played out in the region, she said.
Exercises that have simulated what the impact would be going back decades is that a conflict in the Korean Peninsula would be not only very disruptive in the region, but could potentially lead to World War III because of the U.S. security guarantee. So it would be internationalized overnight. Very difficult to measure the duration of such a conflict, or even the scope. But it is the single biggest geopolitical threat, and one that would also move markets, in my view, in a way that, for example, the Syrian conflict, which has been incredibly disruptive on a human level, refugee crisis and everything else, hasn't generated, for example, an oil price spike. So when we look at political risk, we look at whether it's likely to cause an oil price shock or a growth shock. And in the North Korea case,
at Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
If the worst were to happen, it would be both.
Do you allocate probability?
Stop here just for a second, because I have to say that I would tend to agree with her in these terms. That if this happened because of various international agreements, that is to say the U.S. has signed agreements with Japan, for example, to be the protector, obviously with Guam, a territorial aspect of the United States. I have to agree with her in terms of that. Once we bring in other countries, then other semi-aligned nations are going to want to become actors in this, and that would include China, possibly even Russia, and or others.
So, I mean, have you got a sense of what the probability is of some type of strike on North Korea, some type of invasion, an escalation of some shape or form on what's going on right now?
Again, here, as someone who's maybe a veteran of doing this, I'm pretty loath to try to ascribe probabilities when there's just so much volatility in the key players, right? Not only is the North Korean leader ramping up the tests with 6 this year, but Donald Trump is also changing U.S. foreign and security policy in a way that we haven't seen before. So that mix of...
Okay, yes. We haven't seen before, but I would submit to this young lady, we haven't seen it in the past 8 years. This is a perfect political storm that has been set up by previous presidents. Yes, definitely, to include Bush as well, who decided that throughout all these years, they really didn't want to do much of anything about North Korea. And they certainly didn't want to do anything about Iran, except within the past 8 years under Obama, they decided that it would be best to placate Iran and perhaps to put North Korea on ignore mode, whilst simultaneously China decides that it's going to abet North Korea as much as humanly possible. And now it gets dumped into Donald Trump's lap. This is something that's been building for quite some time.
Unpredictability in the key leaders it just adds to the mix of the potential for misunderstanding, and accidents at a minimum, and possibly something worse. I would also say, though, that it isn't just a binary kind of an outcome. And investors tend to see it as either there will or won't be conflict, and then to say, well, given that conflict would be so disruptive, that's just unlikely to happen. There are also implications in between those outcomes. For example, the trade disruptions, the U.S.-China tensions, and other things that will also matter to markets if they come to bear. So that's another way of looking at it from an investment perspective.
Except that with North Korea, there is no gray area. There either will be conflict or there won't. We know one thing, depending upon your consideration of whether Kim Jong-un is crazy like a fox or just plain damn crazy. He keeps pushing the envelope. Sooner or later, someone's going to. It's the nature of humans. Somewhere along the line, someone's going to decide to push back. This is almost a catch-22 situation that I'm not sure completely is solvable by Donald Trump until it gets to the point where we actually throw munitions at each other. The big question will be, what kind of munitions are thrown back and forth? That's the question of it all. I could easily see way too many nations getting involved in this that think for whatever reason, treaties or otherwise, that they have to support one side or the other. Here's another aspect today that I noticed, and perhaps you hadn't heard of this. Here's an article from Breitbart, and it's about the lovely Susan Rice. And the headline is, Susan Rice admits unmasking Trump team after denying knowing anything. Do you remember when she appeared before Congress and said, no, I don't know anything about that? Well, guess what? Susan Rice admitted to lawmakers last week that she unmasked the Trump transition team officials, even though earlier this year she denied knowing anything about it. Now, Susan Rice was asked by the PBS NewsHour's Judy Woodruff on March 22nd, earlier this year, about allegations that Trump transition officials were swept up in surveillance of foreigners at the end of the Obama administration. Here's exactly what she said. Here's her quote. "I know nothing about this," Rice had said at the time. But last week she told the House Intelligence Committee that she had unmasked Trump transition team members in order to understand why the Emirati Crown Prince was visiting New York late last year, according to a CNN report. Who or why was Susan Rice given the ability to unmask these people instead of folks that do that kind of job specifically? There's only one answer: politics and Obama, period, end of statement. So let that rattle around in your wheelhouse for a while. Then there was a tete-a-tete back and forth that opened up a wide range of possibilities as far as I was concerned earlier this week. And I referred to it a little bit earlier about Dianne Feinstein and her discussion with someone who is a Catholic, and she's up for a federal judgeship. So after all of this, I finally had to ask the question, okay, is religious affiliation now a disqualifier for public service according to Democrats? And again, from Breitbart, Dianne Feinstein interrogates judicial nominees' Catholic faith. Senator Dianne Feinstein and other Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee questioned whether the Catholic faith of a judicial nominee would disqualify her from carrying out the duties of her intended office. Stop. Dr. Jones pointed this out. Hey, what about President John F. Kennedy, a Democrat, back in 1961? So apparently we have not progressed anything from there since 1961, or have we regressed? Maybe it's not A, but maybe it's B. Feinstein told Notre Dame Law School professor Amy Coney Barrett, who has been nominated by President Donald Trump to serve on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 7th District, that, quote, this is her quote, you'll hear it, "The dogma lives loudly within you, and that's of concern when you come to big issues that large number of people have fought for years in this country." Dog whistle.
Thank you. Now, Senator Feinstein.
Thanks very much.
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say, Professor, that on a...
Here comes Dianne Feinstein's sort of really terribly tacky utilization of the 1-minute manager, because she's going to praise up front, and then the knives are going to come out.
Personal level, you're amazing to have 7 children and do what you do. And as I watch the faces of these children, I can see that they very much care about their mother. And all those vibrations are very good. So I just wanted to say that to you. It's quite a family. I have trouble with one. So yeah, my admiration for you with 7 is quite strong. You are controversial. Let's start with that. You're controversial because many of us that have lived our lives as women really recognize the value of finally being able to control our reproductive systems. And Roe entered into that, obviously. I listened to your answers to Senator Grassley's question, and it leaves me a bit puzzled because you have a long history of believing that your religious beliefs should prevail. Let me ask a question. In a 2000...
Wait, stop right there. Isn't it true that one of the Supreme Court members said that my Latina background informs my decisions? A Supreme Court member already said that. A sitting U.S. Supreme Court member. That's okay, though. That's okay.
13 article. You argued that the force of Supreme Court super precedents does not, and this is the quote, does not derive from any decision by the court, but rather because litigants don't challenge the decisions. You listed Supreme Court super precedents, but you left out Roe v. Wade. You suggested that Roe is not a super precedent because litigants continue to challenge it. However, as a textbook co-authored by Justice Neil Gorsuch last year points out, Roe is super precedent because it has survived more than 36 attempts to overturn it. So in evaluating super precedents, why did you solely focus on the fact that Roe has been challenged by litigants on so many occasions, and not on the fact that the Supreme Court has repeatedly reaffirmed Roe in literally dozens of decisions?
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. That wasn't my list. I was addressing arguments that had been made by other professors, serious, well-respected scholars like Richard Fallon at Harvard and Michael Gerhardt at North Carolina.
Meaning, Dianne Feinstein, you didn't even read the damn thing properly. You didn't read all of it. You just made a selection that appealed just to you.
And it wasn't my list. I was quoting them, and I was quoting their definition of super precedent. One thing I would observe is that for a court of appeals, all Supreme Court precedent is super precedent. So as I said to Chairman...
There you go. Dianne Feinstein, up yours with super precedent.
Grassley, as a court of appeals judge, if I were confirmed, I would follow all Supreme Court precedent without fail.
Okay.
Uh-oh. That's bad to say. She would follow, and she seems to revere precedent. Not what leftists want to hear. They want federal judges and SCOTUS to make law, not to interpret law. They want these judges, federal judges, and SCOTUS to make their own law.
A second question. In Planned Parenthood v. Casey, the Supreme Court reaffirmed Roe and listed 4 factors excuse me, that must be considered before the court overturned precedent. One of the factors the court listed was a reliance interest, meaning that the court would consider whether overturning precedent would create a special hardship because people had planned their lives in reliance on the decision. In 2003, you wrote that in deciding to overturn precedent, reliance interests should, quote, count far less when precedent clearly exceeds a court's interpretive authority, end quote. Give us an example of a Supreme Court precedent that exceeded the court's interpreted authority. Is Roe an example?
Senator, I confess that I don't recall the quote that you read to me, and I think I would need to see it in context to fully address your question about that quote. As for your question about Roe, I think that the line that other nominees before the committee have drawn in refraining from comment about their agreement or disagreement or the merits or demerits of any Supreme Court precedent is a prudent one, because I would commit, if confirmed, to follow unflinchingly all Supreme Court precedent, and I would not want to leave the impression that I would give some precedents less weight than others because of any kind of, academic disagreement with one.
What that means is each case is different, and I will do my job to interpret each case as they appear before me individually. Guess what? That's the job.
Well, how do you evaluate the precedents, plural, with respect to Roe?
The Supreme Court precedents?
Yes.
Well, Roe and Casey and its progeny, as you say, Roe has been affirmed many times and survived many challenges in the court, and it's more than 40 years old, and it's clearly binding on all courts of appeals. And so it's not open to me or up to me, and I would have no interest in, as a court of appeals judge, challenging that precedent. It would bind.
Uh-oh.
Well, let me ask one other question on reliance interest. What do you understand women's reliance interest to be in the right to privacy, which is protected by Roe?
Well, Senator, as you mentioned in Casey, the court, in evaluating the stare decisis question, the court itself weighed women's reliance interests in planning their reproductive lives. And so the court said that in Casey, and that's clearly the reliance interest that's been recognized in Supreme Court doctrine.
And you accept that?
Yes, as I accept all Supreme Court doctrine.
Okay.
Just what she didn't want to hear. But again, it's identity politics broken down by Dianne Feinstein. Now here's Dick Durbin. We know Dianne Feinstein raked her over the coals. Well, guess what? So did Dick Durbin at the same hearing.
And it is relevant in that you have many times spoken out as a professor and as a lawyer about the burden and opportunity presented by your faith. This article of 20 years ago, which you wrote with John Garvey, as I understand it, you now say you don't agree with. Is that correct?
No, Senator Durbin. I agree with the article's main point, as I said, which is that any kind of conviction, religious or otherwise, should never surpass the law. A judge can never follow or impose that judge's personal conviction upon litigants in the decision of cases. And that was the article's main point, and I agree with it. Would I, sitting here today, write that article the same way or say that it's an exact mirror image of how I would feel now, 20 years older? No. But the thrust of it, that core point, which restates 28 U.S.C. 455's ethical obligation, I obviously, as every judge would, adhere to.
Basically, what she's telling them is that I am going to obey the law. And they know it. And they know that's her point. So then they have to ask her, Professor Barrett, you know what? Can a Catholic be a judge?
You have a long history of believing that your religious beliefs should prevail. Over time, we learn to also judge what they think and whether their thoughts enable them to be free to observe the law.
So in spite of the fact that you had written in an earlier article that Catholic judges, and you would be a Catholic judge, you would not recuse yourself from death penalty cases. Well, then let me pose the question, then if you were not up for a circuit court, but for a district court, would you recuse yourself as a Catholic judge from death penalty cases?
Why is it that so many of us on this side...
What's the point? What's the point? What's the point? You have to ask yourself that question. The point is, the Democrats have gotten to the point where only someone who is secular should be considered for any federal judgeship whatsoever.
have this very uncomfortable feeling that, dogma and law are two different things. And I think whatever a religion is, it has its own dogma. The law is totally different.
Would Dianne Feinstein be asking that of a Muslim? Would Dianne Feinstein, let's say Keith Ellison, someone decided to nominate Keith Ellison because he didn't make DNC chair, that Keith Ellison wanted, since someone had appointed him for a federal judgeship, would Dianne Feinstein be asking these questions of him? We should maybe next rightly ask, can a Muslim be a member of Congress? If not a Christian, then why a Muslim or a Buddhist or a Shinto priest? Keith Ellison. Okay, and I forgot, Andre Carson. Go away, right? Because they are religious. Or is this a constitutional issue, the likes of which persons such as Dianne Feinstein don't comprehend, as illustrated by her discourse with Antonin Scalia? Now, I love to listen to Scalia. Listen to the tete-a-tete between Scalia and Feinstein. You want to talk about some schooling that occurs here?
America is represented by the distinction of this great court. And now, I want to ask you something about the 14th Amendment, and if both of you could respond to it. It's simple. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law.
By the way, this is the Judiciary Committee hearing.
Nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. Is a woman included within that definition?
Yeah. A woman's a person. I think that's well established.
Yeah, the issue is not whether a woman's a person. The issue
You know
is
where I'm going.
The issue is what constitutes equal protection.
Yes, all right. Are women included?
Yeah. Of course they're included.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you.
But does he?
By the way, the other voice other than Scalia is Judge Stevens.
Equal protection mean that
SCOTUS member Judge Stevens.
that you have to have unisex toilets. I mean, that's the
No,
kind
no.
of question you have to get into.
This is your quote, Mr. Justice, in California. Certainly, the Constitution does not require discrimination on the basis of sex. The only issue is whether it prohibits it. It doesn't. Nobody ever thought that's what it meant. Nobody ever voted for that. If the current society wants to outlaw discrimination by sex, hey, we have things called legislatures, and they enact things called laws. So why doesn't the 14th Amendment then cover women?
The 14th Amendment, Senator, does not apply to private discrimination. I was speaking of Title VII and
Bada bing, bada boom. Federal.
Laws that prohibit private discrimination. The 14th Amendment says nothing about private discrimination. Only discrimination by government.
You opened the door, he walked right through it.
Yes.
So, I see what you meant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I see what you meant. Hang on, folks. I'm going somewhere with this because, as I said at the beginning of the show, I'm going to make a revelation about D.C. that inherently you'd intuited, and I'm going to take an extra couple of stories to get there. And when I tell you this new well, it's not new, it's ancient, this D.C. axiom, which finally was admitted by someone, and I'm going to play that cut as well, then everything else that occurs in D.C. is going to make sense to you. And you're all going to go, oh, fuck yeah.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network.
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is the very last segment. And again, holy crap did this show go fast, but it customarily does. This is the last segment in the saloon. I have a few more stories to read, and then soon you will understand the DC axiom. Now, earlier, before the break, I'd been talking about Professor Barrett, a female who is up for judgeship in the 7th District Court of Appeals. Dianne Feinstein and the rest of the Democrats decided to take it upon themselves to say that essentially, because she was a religious woman, Catholic, that she could not be a sitting judge. Well, hell, using that rationale, then could anyone who wasn't completely secular be up for any job in the federal government? I would wager that there'd be a lot of Democrats who would say no. The problem with Professor Barrett is that she continued to say she would obey the law. Here's a quote: "I would stress that my personal church affiliation or my religious belief would not bear on my duties as a judge." Okay, so Durbin took fire, rightly so, and Dianne Feinstein took fire, and rightly so. Here's an article from Politico. Senators take fire over questions for Catholic judicial nominee. At least 2 prominent university presidents are accusing senators of religious bias for challenging a Catholic judicial nominee over her faith-driven views during a confirmation hearing last week. University of Notre Dame President Reverend John Jenkins and Princeton University President Christopher Eisgruber both wrote letters objecting to lawmakers' pointed questions on the topics to Notre Dame law professor Amy Barrett last week, whom President Donald Trump nominated to the Chicago-based 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. And that's the cat stuck in the toilet right there. The issue could be her, certainly, but they're going to make it an issue because it's Donald Trump. And it's him that's making the nomination. So that's the issue. Now, while we're talking about Feinstein, has anybody besides myself noticed that Nancy Pelosi is going off the damn deep end? Listen to her here.
LGBTQ community and a strong history of legacy of advocacy for equal rights. And we were very proud of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and President Obama was so very much a part of that. Now, let's hear it for President Obama. That's an applause line.
That's an applause line.
I'll tell you when it's an applause line if we're not kind of in sync. And now we're fighting for something called the Equality Act, a historic comprehensive bill, and I will continue to do everything in our power to end discrimination in the workplace and in every other aspect of life that ensures that all American families are viewed equally in the eyes of the law.
Is it just me, or does she sound like she's drunk and slurring her words? Continue to listen.
That's an applause line. And stop the bullying of the LGBT community youth in our schools and in our society. That's right. Stop the bullying of our kids. Innovation must be about...
Did you hear what she said? The bulleting of our kids. I don't think kids want to be bulleted, if you ask me.
Inclusion. That's what Sam's about. Sam Altman. All right. Applause line.
All right, applause line. Yeah. And then she was asked, who's the leader of the free world? I wonder who that would be.
Who is the leader of the Democratic Party right now?
Well, President Obama was the president of the United States until just a matter of weeks ago. I don't think that he can be dismissed as the leader of the Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton did not win the election, but a respected leader. But we have leaders for all different aspects of it. The Democratic Party is a congressional party, and we have leaders in Congress. It is a gubernatorial party, and
but on the state level, it is a party which has suffered tremendous losses in the last couple of years.
By the way, that's Anderson Cooper asking her that obvious question that she apparently cannot seem to answer.
It has, but we have a plan to address that.
So there's not one standard bearer for that you see as the leader of the Democratic Party?
We're not in a presidential time.
Just finally, when you...
Really? She wants to go there?
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
She can't even answer questions. And then she gets giggles out of nowhere.
And really, for our kids to be part of the arts, to be part of a drama club, a band, a choral group, it's a very positive thing. They want to join something, especially in middle school and high school and the rest. And it's a force for good. The poet Shelley once said, "The greatest force for moral good is imagination." Imagination, of course, to be creative, but imagination to put yourself in other people's shoes, to share experiences. I think we should view the arts in that way. Yes, sir.
One more. Speaking of the arts, Kim Jong-un's been celebrating her ICBM launch with some cultural performances. I just wondered, you live in San Francisco, which seems to be on the verge of being threatened now by North Korea's ballistic missile program. Do you have confidence in the administration's approach on handling this issue? And if not, what do you think that they should change up?
Well, let me just say that I'm one of the few members of Congress who's been to Pyongyang, to the capital. Many members have been to Panmunjom, the border, but I've been to the capital.
Yeah, like that matters.
Trump Care means heart-stopping premium increases for Americans in anything from asthma to cancer, and the list goes on.
You think Neil Innes had a great cut called Gibberish? Listen to this. He doesn't hold a candle to Nancy Pelosi's gibberish.
On the alphabet. The fight against Trump Care is a fight for children. You've heard me, many of you, talk frequently about Zoe Madison Lynn. Under Trump Care, has put Zoe's future, a crushing age tax if you're 50 to 64. Republicans offer to raise health care for America's families must end now. The list can go on and on. I just named a few of the few areas of unfairness to America's working families. So then that was 60% of the public were against that. So they moved to the right and placed in jeopardy the essential benefits package.
Yeah, okay, I think I'm done with her. Anyway, you get the point. Here's another story. Continue with me, roll with me on this, because this one in particular is very important to the point that I'm going to kind of wrap up the show with. Here's an article from Breitbart.com. The headline is, Jeff Sessions, his DOJ will not investigate IRS suppression of Tea Party groups. And you probably already heard that. You probably already knew Sessions, his DOJ, decided that, we're not going to go after Lois Lerner. Although she went after conservative groups, and that was purposeful, and then she lied about it. Republicans slammed the Friday announcement by President Donald Trump's Justice Department that it will not investigate the official who allegedly oversaw the IRS, their secret sabotage of American civics groups before the 2012 election. This is a terrible decision, said a statement from Texas Representative Kevin Brady, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, which oversees taxes in the IRS. His statement continued, "It sends the message that the same legal, ethical, and constitutional standards we all live by do not apply to Washington political appointees, who will now have the green light to target Americans for their political beliefs and mislead investigators without ever being held accountable for their lawlessness. Not only has the Department of Justice chosen to hold IRS manager Lois Lerner criminally liable for obstructing an official investigation by the Inspector General, the department continues to defend the Internal Revenue Service's unconstitutional actions against taxpayers in ongoing civil litigations. The decision not to prosecute Lois Lerner is a miscarriage of justice," said an accompanying statement from the chairman of the Tax Policy Subcommittee, Illinois Representative Peter Roskam. He continued, "On top of Ms. Lerner's actions against taxpayers, citizens, folks, like you and me, denying tax-exempt status to groups for political gain and failing to protect taxpayer information," if you remember that point, the department's response blatantly ignores our most troubling finding that Ms. Lerner intentionally misled federal investigators in a flagrant violation of the law. This is unacceptable, and Ms. Lerner must be held accountable. Our democracy is injured when those who taxpayers entrust with great authority ignore the law to advance their own political agenda without repercussions. Stop. What do we know about the three branches of government? There's the executive, the legislative, the judicial, and of course we know now, as I've said for quite some time, there's the deep state, the bureaucratic branch of government, who at times, like her, actually have more power than the other three. And was this person elected? Did you cast a ballot for her? No, of course you didn't. You didn't at all. Well, then did you hear about this? You may or may not have. Here's an article from Politico. Politico runs hot and cold. I'll use them when they suit my message. And the message is this. Listen, GOP senators, by the way, 2 of them, GOP senators said, and this is absolutely heinous, James Comey drafted a statement clearing Clinton before her interview. Grassley and Graham say evidence suggests decision not to file charges was prejudged. This is an article by Josh Gerstein. Former FBI Director James Comey began drafting a statement rejecting the idea of criminal charges against Democrat presidential candidate Hillary Clinton over her private email account about 2 months or more before Clinton was interviewed in the FBI probe, according to partial transcripts of interviews released Thursday by 2 Republican senators. All right, now what do we know about many of those interviews? Yeah, they weren't recorded. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley and Senator Lindsey Graham said they obtained the transcripts from the Office of Special Counsel, a government watchdog agency that launched an investigation into whether Comey's actions violated a federal law against government employees engaging in political activity while on duty. In a letter sent Wednesday to Comey's successor, FBI Director Christopher Wray, Grassley and Graham said Comey's move to start preparing the statement sometime in April or May reflected.
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.
A premature conclusion that Clinton shouldn't be charged. Conclusion first, fact-gathering second. That's no way to run an investigation. The FBI should be held to a higher standard than that, especially in a matter of such great public interest and controversy, Grassley and Graham wrote as they demanded all FBI records of the drafts Comey prepared as well as other materials related to the OSC probe. Grassley and Graham said the OSC, a permanent independent executive branch agency unrelated to special counsel Robert Mueller's Trump-Russia probe, shut down its investigation after Comey was fired in May by President Donald Trump, as well he should have been much earlier. Comey should have been fired by Trump on January 20th, in my opinion. That's because the key law prohibiting use of an official position for political purposes, the Hatch Act, is not a criminal statute. As a result, there's no action that can be taken against people who are no longer government employees. Well, except that Comey was a government employee back then. Here's another opinion. And again, roll with me. We got about 10 minutes left. Here's another opinion from the Washington Examiner. Shame on the FBI for dropping Hillary Clinton's email scandal. As you know, they did. The FBI. The mainstream media has bombarded Americans for a year with stories about the alleged collusion between Trump campaign officials and the Russian government, which supposedly gave hacked emails to WikiLeaks in a coordinated effort to destroy Hillary Clinton in return for some unknown favor. After 8 months of government leaks, including from top intelligence agencies and countless investigations from the press and Democrats in Congress, we still have no evidence of any collusion. There's evidence the Russian government wanted Donald Trump to win the election. There's evidence some in the Trump camp, notably Donald Trump Jr., were at least willing to consider working with the Russian government. Yeah, due to a Russian attorney. And the government, in terms of trying to get information over on Hillary Clinton, who doesn't do that on their Oppo teams. There's even evidence Trump had been working on a business deal in Russia while running for president. Maybe yes, maybe no. But after the thousands of hours of investigating, there's still no evidence of collusion, and WikiLeaks continues to say, as it has all along, that it did not receive the Democrat National Committee emails it received from the Russians. There is, however, a massive story involving a 2016 presidential candidate who violated federal law that has plenty of supporting evidence. The FBI's botched, and he says perhaps deliberately, investigation of Clinton's illegal use of a private email server while she served as Secretary of State. And let's not forget what started that investigation in the first place. The countless lies told by the Obama administration in its attempt to cover up the 2012 Benghazi disaster. While most in the media continue to work tirelessly to pursue the next Russia-related leak, it has largely ignored the FBI's investigation of Clinton, which now looks more and more like it was an utterly corrupt endeavor from the start. Now, with those two stories in mind, keep those in the back of your brain housing group. Let's transition over to this. This is from the ACLJ, and if you don't send them a check every once in a while, I suggest you could. It's the aclj.org. And this is the organization that Jay Sekulow and his son Jordan run. Here's the headline. It's time for a real investigation into fired FBI Director James Comey. Let me stop there for just a second. We were talking to the underground professor, and he essentially indicated that, in his opinion, the FBI, in and of itself on its face, is not constitutional because that wasn't the intention of the founders who wrote the original documents. Almost immaterial because the FBI is here to stay. It's no surprise that I worked for them. I also worked for the U.S. Marshals, two arms of the federal government, before I came to my senses and decided that I was going to work for local governments. But having said that, I can tell you that the FBI, because of one individual, James Comey, former director James Comey, has had its once fairly decent reputation tarnished to a point where I'm not sure it can come back in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. The confidence that people once had in the FBI is gone because they have politically cherry-picked under James Comey whatever the hell they wanted to whenever they chose to do so, in pretty much what appeared to be an arbitrary fashion, but is absolutely 100% political in nature. Especially considering the revelation that both Grassley and Graham have said that Comey came to the conclusion, before even interviewing Hillary Clinton. How does one do that and remain valid in the eyes of the American public? Because if you lose the FBI and they're no longer valid and you don't have confidence in them, to whom do you go then? What's your backup plan? Trust me when I tell you, you have to consider this on two separate levels. The Indians and the chiefs. The Indians, the FBI agents, do a hell of a job. They want to do their job. And I cannot tell you how so many of them are terribly embarrassed that James Comey has taken their once good name and taken it and run it through a cesspool of filth, disgust, and lies. James Comey should have been fired January 20th. And shame on Donald Trump for thinking that he could do something with it, because James Comey came right back to bite Donald Trump in the arse. James Comey decided he's the first FBI director of which I'm aware that actually went out to leak information so that he could get Robert Mueller to start a special counsel investigation on Donald Trump about Russia. James Comey broke the sacred trust of the American people. He perpetrated a fraud on the American people. The now fired FBI director conducted a fake criminal investigation into Hillary Clinton. It has become apparent that he prejudged the investigation and predetermined the outcome months before interviewing key witnesses and Hillary Clinton herself. So the ACLJ decided they were going to launch their own investigation into Comey's corruption. A few more minutes left. I already wrote about this. I wrote this, let's see, when was this? Earlier this week. I wrote it actually on Tuesday, posted it on Wednesday. And the title of my post is The Ultimate DC Political Truth Finally Revealed. And I said, this may be the most important post that I'm going to write the rest of this year. And I have to say, you got to trust me when I say that it is the, and I mean the, bold, italics, all caps, etc., great font. It is the underlying truth that essentially drives all of DC, no matter the issue, no matter the party. That's important. It crosses the aisle. It goes to everyone, and everyone in DC is linked by this DC axiom. And it was actually stated. When I heard this, I was validated. And now I want to show you, because of what you already knew, you intuited this. I'm going to validate you as well. I have to note that the GOP is particularly sensitive to this, as the GOP still wants to be loved a lot more than the Democrats. And I found someone with the balls to state the politically obvious. And this all started when I began researching the same situation that I told you about. I started researching the decision made by Jeff Sessions' DOJ, his DOJ. It's his. He owns it. Not to prosecute Hillary Clinton. So listen to this. Listen to the beginning of it, and then this individual is going to wrap it up with the statement of statements. And who is this, by the way? It's Judge Andrew Napolitano.
A judge in Maryland has ordered an investigation into 3 lawyers who reportedly helped Hillary Clinton delete her private emails.
Okay, so this is Stuart Varney on Varney and Company talking to Judge Andrew Napolitano.
Remember, this is not a criminal investigation, and it's not a civil lawsuit. It's an ethics investigation. Did these 3 lawyers violate ethical rules by the manner in which they physically handled Mrs. Clinton's emails? The worst that could happen to them is a public reprimand.
That's it?
That's it. So where is this going? The government has chosen not to prosecute. Jeff Sessions, the Justice Department, can investigate, indict, and prosecute, but they choose not to do so.
Would you think that's a good decision?
They choose not to do so. Remember exactly this was a choice that was made. There's a reason.
To prosecute?
To not prosecute.
No, I think it's a terrible decision not to prosecute. They should prosecute Mrs. Clinton because there's ample evidence of her guilt.
Okay, let me go back. Play this over again.
No, I think it's
because we're going somewhere.
Terrible decision not to prosecute. They should prosecute Mrs. Clinton because there's ample evidence of her guilt, and they should prosecute anybody that destroyed evidence in a criminal investigation.
You disappointed with Jeff Sessions thus far?
Yes, even though he's my friend, I'm going to hear about this. Yes.
Why wouldn't you? You have the opportunity, the means, and the motive. You're not going to take advantage of that?
This and for other reasons.
Why do you think he stepped back from pushing the envelope on?
Here it comes. Why?
In these cases, why?
I hate to tell you this. It's an institutional culture in government.
This is the crux of the biscuit, ladies and gentlemen.
We don't want to go after our predecessors because we don't want our successors to come after us.
Okay, well, that's a good explanation. It's rational. It's sane. That's it.
As Judge Andrew Napolitano stated, let me tell you this again. It's no more complicated than this. And no more disgusting and reprehensible than this. It's an institutional culture in government. We don't want to go after our predecessors because we don't want our successors to come after us. Are you kidding me? No. That is the DC axiom.
Monsieur has unlocked.
That is what motivates all of DC. Never forget it, and never forget where you heard it. Here in the saloon. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I have to tell you, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon here on the SHR Media Network. You want to contact me? You can find me on Twitter at bzep, on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Send me an email at bz@shrmedia.com. Promotional consideration by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. My tiaras are by My Little Pony. Of course, thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team with whom I shall be intimately consulting and consorting within the hour. Thank you ever so kindly for listening live. Thanks to the Underground Professor. Thank you for being involved in the chat room, and thanks for listening in podcast. If this is too damn late for a whole bunch of you, God bless, take care, be safe.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Good night, Jim Bob. Go back to sleep.
Good night, and good luck.
At Century Arms, we're committed to supporting your freedom, your rights, and your way of life. With generations of craftsmanship and innovation, we proudly provide firearms that embody the spirit of liberty. Introducing the new Sharp Brothers MB-47 rifle, designed for precision, built for strength, and ready for anything. Whether you're on the range or defending what matters most, the MB-47 rifle is where generation meets innovation. For more information, visit us at centuryarms.com now.